Hey, all right, let's go, everybody. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's session. My name's Kevin Land, and today we're going to spend about 45 minutes going deep on DraftSight network licensing, specifically the network license manager, how to manage sheets, and how to handle some of the trickier scenarios that come up in the real world. So I want to make this as practical as possible. So if you have any specific scenario in mind, drop it in the Q&A. Everybody does their, networking a little bit differently. Well, not like fully differently, but people have certain ways of doing things. Let me know what kind of problems that you might come across, or just some general questions that maybe not just myself, but maybe the user community can all gather together and answer as we go along. So I'm your host, Kevin Land. I'm an industry process expert here at Dassault Systems. I've been working in the world of design and drafting for close to 30 years now. A little background history about me. My journey started way back in AutoCAD Release 13, 1998. Since then, I've worked across a country in a variety of different industries, from electrical substations, wind farms, solar arrays, and LNG power plants, even landscape architecture. But most recently, I was at the ride and show engineering department at Walt Disney World here in Florida. So I've had the privilege of using a wide variety of CAD platforms over the years. I've done AutoCAD, MicroStation, SolidWorks, Fusion 360, Revit. You know, I've pretty much touched them all. Um, but I can tell you with confidence that DraftSight is a serious contender in that CAD space. Uh, so here's what we have today. We start with an overview of both license managers, so you know what distinguishes each of them. Then we're going to go over section by section through SNL, installation, client setup, revoking licenses, borrowing for offline use, and then we're going to shift over to the DSLS and do a little deep dive into that. After that, I'm just going to add in some pro tips at the very end, and then I'm going to leave the last 15 minutes for Q&A. All right, so let's get started on the presentation. All right, so if you're not aware, there are multiple versions of DraftSight available for your specific project need. So anything that you say that is Enterprise, Enterprise Plus on this, that is our network license versions. If it's just as DraftSight Professional, DraftSight Premium, that is a standalone. Mechanical also comes as a network license as well. And if something is 3D Experience, then that means that you're just going to be downloading from the 3D Experience platform. No need for a network version of that. All right, so before we touch any kind of configuration, let's just, check out the two differences between SNL and DSLS. When you purchase DraftSight Enterprise or Enterprise Plus with a network license, you choose at purchase time which license manager you want to use. You can't mix them, and you can't change after the fact without going back to your reseller. So the two options are the Solid Network License Manager, SNL, and the Dassault Systems License Server. On the left side of this slide is the SNL. It is based on FlexLM technology, which is the same foundation as SolidWorks network licensing. So if your organization already runs on SolidWorks on an SNL server, your DraftSight serial numbers can be added directly to that same server. No second machine, no second tool. For SolidWorks shops, this is the always right choice because the infrastructure and the administrative knowledge are already in place. On the right side is the DSLS. This is Dassault's own proprietary licensing engine. It has nothing to do with FlexLM. DSLS is used across the broader Dassault portfolio, CATIA, Innovia, Simulia. If your organization uses any of those products, there's a good chance DSLS is already familiar to your IT team. Your admin tool is a graphical interface called the License Administration Tool, which is a web-based style GUI rather than the SNL Manager application. A few things are in common to both. Both are Windows Server on the server side. Both serve floating seats, both support offline borrowing, and both require the server and clients to have TCP/IP connectivity. The note at the bottom of this slide is important. Today we're going to cover both SNL, and then we're going to cover DSLS in a little second section deep dive. And then I'm going to add some pro tips at the very end to see where things differ. With that framing in place, all right, let's start with the SNL side. Okay, so the architecture of SNL is pretty straightforward. You have your client workstations running DraftSight, your SNL license server sitting on your internal network, and Dassault's activation servers out on the internet. So day to day, the clients talk only to your SNL server over TCP/IP on your local network. Dassault's activation servers are only contacted during the initial license activation or renewal. So your users never need internet access for their daily DraftSight sessions. The key facts to internalize: first, floating seats. When DraftSight opens, it checks out a seat. When DraftSight closes, it goes back to the pool. You're limited to the concurrent user count you purchase. Second, FlexLM technology, the same engine powering SolidWorks network licenses. The log format, the command line utilities, the options file, all of it carries over from SolidWorks SNL experience. Third, one SNL server can serve both DraftSight and SolidWorks simultaneously using separate serial numbers on the same server. And fourth, it's a correction from some older guidance that you may have seen. SNL does not use a .lic file that you generate from a portal. Instead, you enter DraftSight serial number directly into the SNL Manager application, and it activates against Dassault servers automatically over the internet. So let's walk through step by step of what you're going to do. So first, step one, download SNL from DraftSight.com. Go to DraftSight.com, support, downloads, and look for the Solid Network License Manager entry. You'll need to log in with your 3D Experience ID. No, it's not My SolidWorks, which is an older portal. The current portal is 3D Experience. If you have a SolidWorks subscription, you can also get SNL from the SolidWorks downloads page, but DraftSight.com is a primary DraftSight specific source. Step number 2, install a dedicated server. This needs to be a machine that stays online around the clock. Windows Server 2016, 2019, 2022. Windows Desktop can technically work, but it's not really advised in a large production because reboots and updates are going to knock your users offline, which is definitely not something you want to do. All right, step number 3, open the SNL Manager and activate your serial number. After installing, go to Start, SolidWorks Tools, Solid Network License Manager Server. When it prompts you to activate, click Yes. Then click Add Serial Number, enter your DraftSight serial number, and choose Automatic over the internet. Enter your email, then click Next to finish. The activation contacts Dassault servers and registers the license. The result window confirms how many seats you have and shows the maintenance expiration date. All right, step number 4, verify that the service is running. After a successful activation, the SNL service starts automatically. Confirm the start option is selected in the SNL Manager window. You can also check it in the Windows services under Computer Management. All right, and then step number 5, test it. Make sure to test it before rollout. Install DraftSight on one test workstation. Enter 25734 at whatever the server name is when prompted for the server during the install wizard. Confirm you can open DraftSight and that a seat is actually consumed from the Network License Manager. Do this before pushing to everyone. You definitely want to check it before you start just sending off everything. So one of the most common reasons a fresh SNL server doesn't want to work is the firewall. It's designed to do a job to block out any bad stuff so it doesn't really know what you're doing. So let's go through some of the ports and make sure those ports are the ones that you're going to use, okay? So port 25734 is your main LMGRD daemon, the primary SNL port. It must be open inbound on the server's firewall. Port 25735 is the vendor daemon, called SL daemon. This also needs to be open inbound. Here's the critical issue. So by default, this port is dynamic. Every time the SNL service restarts, SL daemon can come up on a different port. That means your firewall rules break after every reboot. So the fix is simple, and I can't overstate how much trouble this saves. In SNL Manager Server, go to Server Administration, Advanced Settings, and specify a fixed static port number for the vendor daemon. Pick any available high port, document it, and write your firewall rule against that fixed number. This is the single most common cause of licenses worked yesterday but not today calls after a server restart. Port 443 HTTPS outbound is only needed for the initial activation and renewals. Your user's DraftSight session does not require internet access. So run through the pre-go live checklist on the bottom left here before you tell users to connect. SNL service set to automatic startup, firewall rules in place for both ports, status shows running, and confirmed test checkout from one client. The mistakes on the right are the issues we see most often on the forums. Installing a DHCP machine tops the list. If your server's MAC address changes, your license activation becomes invalid. All right. Now let's talk about getting client machines pointed at the SNL server, because there's a common misconception I want to address right away, and that's in the purple callout at the top of this slide. There is no option inside DraftSight itself to configure which license server to use. You cannot open DraftSight and navigate to help or settings and change the server there. There's nothing like that. The server connection is set in one of two places. Method A, the DraftSight installation wizard. When you install DraftSight on a client machine, one of the setup screens asks you to choose your license type. You select Solid Network License, SNL, and then on the next screen, you enter the server location using the port at server format, 25734 at whatever the server name is. Once you click through and finish the installation, DraftSight is configured to point at that server. The installer also automatically installs the SNL Manager client application as part of the process. And then there's method B, the SNL Manager client application. This is the separate tool that gets installed alongside DraftSight. You'll find it in the Start menu under Dassault Systems folder, and you'll see it's Solid Network License Manager client, whatever version, 20, blah, blah, blah. If you need to update the server after DraftSight is already installed, say you migrated to a new license server, you do it here. You go to the server's list tab and add or edit the server entry using the same port as server syntax. For large deployments, the right tool is the DraftSight deployment wizard, which you can request from your reseller. It creates an MSI installation image that is pre-configured with your server name, port, and license type. You share a link, and users install with 0 manual steps. The SNL Manager client application has 4 tabs worth knowing. License usage to see who has seats checked out, server list to manage your server connection, license borrowing for the offline borrow feature we'll cover in the next section, and server settings. Keep the location of this app handy. It is distinct from DraftSight itself and is your main client-side management tool. Okay, so what happens when a user leaves? An employee has left the company, and now you need your DraftSight seat back. If the workstation is still on the network, you have 2 clean options. Option A, simply close DraftSight on that workstation. The seat returns to the pool. Option B, go to the SNL Manager client on any machine, open the License Usage tab, find the user in the checkout list, and then click Remove. That forces the check-in from the server side without touching the machine. Once you've freed the seat, disable or delete the user from the Windows account to make sure they can't recheck out anything on that machine. Now, the second side is if the workstation is off or unreachable, it gets more complex. This is where the fun part happens. So that seat will stay listed as in use until one of three things happen. Your timeout setting in the options file expires. More on that in the Pro Tip section. The SNL service restarts, or you use the LM remove command line tool. So restarting SNL service is the most common approach. It clears all checked out seats simultaneously. And it'll be about 30 seconds outage for active usage, but DraftSight will kind of continue on automatically, and it will just reacquire a seat when the service comes back up. So they'll see a brief interruption, nothing lost though. For surgical precision, which is what you kind of really want, that's when you use LM remove. The syntax is on the next slide here. You'll need the feature name, the username as it appears in LM stat, the machine host name, and the display value. You can get all of those from running LM stat first. So build this into your offboarding checklist. The green bar at the bottom here says it all. It verified DraftSight SNL seat reclaimed should be standard item when an employee departs. And note, at the very, very bottom, DSLS also has a revocation capability through its license administration tool, which we'll cover in the next section. So now borrowing. This is one of the most asked about features on the forums, and there's important correction here from older documentation. Okay, so borrowing is done through the SNL Manager client application, not from DraftSight. So let's go through it. Step number 1, confirm borrow is enabled. Check with your reseller and look at the license details. Not all license tiers include the borrow feature. If it's not available, your reseller can request it from Dassault. Step number 2, close DraftSight first. DraftSight must not be running when you borrow. Then open SNL Manager client. Start Dassault Systems, Solid Network, License Manager Client, whatever your version number, year number. All right. Step number 3, go to the License Borrowing tab. You'll see a list of available products. Select DraftSight from the list. Click the calendar icon to choose a borrow until date. The maximum is 30 days, and click borrow. The seat is now reserved for this machine for that period, and the seat count on the server drops by 1. Now, travel and work offline. No VPN, no internet needed. The borrowed license is stored locally on the machine. Step 5, return early when you're back. This is optional but recommended. Open SNL Manager client, go to the license borrowing, select the borrowed item, and click return. The seat goes immediately back to the pool. And that's something, a good habit that you want to do. So this red bar at the bottom of the screen has 2 critical warnings. First, don't borrow while connected via VPN. Only borrow when you are physically on the corporate network. Ethernet is recommended over Wi-Fi for the borrow operation. And second, if the borrow period expires before the user returns the license, there's no way to remotely cancel it. The seat stays consumed until the expiration date. Plan borrow end dates conservatively. And just to contrast for DSLS users, the borrow workflow is different. Borrowing from DSLS is initiated from inside DraftSight through the help menu. We'll cover that when we go to the next section. All right, so we covered all SNL. Let's shift gears and talk about DSLS, the Dassault Systems license server. This is Dassault's proprietary license technology, and it's the license manager of choice for organizations that are part of the broader Dassault ecosystem. So the architecture is similar to SNL at a high level. Clients talk to the DSLS server over TCP/IP, and the server handles license activation with Dassault servers over HTTPS. But the technology underneath is completely different. So the callout on the slide tells you when DSLS is the right choice. If you don't already have SolidWorks running with an SNL server, if your organization uses other Dassault products like CATIA, Innovia, Simulia, or if you prefer a graphical web-style management interface over the FlexLM toolset. So let's just take a quick look at the three tiers on the slide here, okay? So key differences from SNL. DSLS is not FlexLM. This means that LMstat and LMremove command line tools don't exist for DSLS. That tool set is specific to FlexLM. The license file is a .licz file, which you receive from Dassault via email and enroll into the server, rather than entering a serial number. Administration is done through the DS license administration tool, which is a graphical interface. The DSLS ports, this is critical for your firewall configuration. Port 4084 is the administration port. This is how the license administration tool GUI talks to the server. Port 4085 is the licensing port. This is what DraftSight clients use to request a seat. And then port 4086 is only used for failover cluster communication between servers. All ports are TCP. Your clients only need outbound access to port 4085. Architectural notes. So DSLS is server only. You install nothing on client machines. When you install DraftSight and select DSLS as a licensing type, that designates the machine as a DSLS client. Server and clients must be clock synchronized within 1 hour, and only one DSLS instance is allowed per server machine. So let's walk through the install of this process. So step number 1, download the installer. Unlike SNL, you do not get the DSLS installer from DraftSight.com. When you purchase a DSLS license, Dassault emails you a link to the setup DSLS.msi installer and separately a .licz license file. Save both to the server machine before you start. Now, step number 2, run setup DSLS.msi. Double click on the file and follow the prompts, and you'll specify the installation folder. It must be empty. You'll set the administration port, which defaults to 4084, and the licensing port, which defaults to 4085. You have the option to enroll your .licz file during the installation itself, and I recommend doing this to save a step. Step number 3, open the license administration tool and connect. After installation, the license admin tool launches automatically. You'll see a license server connection parameters dialog. Enter the server name and the admin port 4084. The server name will appear in red until the tool locates it on the network. Once it's found, right-click the server icon and choose Connect. All right, step number 4, enroll the .licz license file. If you didn't enroll during setup, do it now. In the license admin tool, go to the license menu and choose Enroll. Browse to your .licz file and click Open. Then click OK in the license enrollment dialog. Once enrolled, the tooltip on the server icon should show connected. So there's an important time sensitivity tip here. The .licz file contains an activation license valid for only 30 days. You must enroll the file within 30 days of receiving it. After that, the activation license expires. The product licenses themselves remain valid, but if you need to re-enroll after the 30-day window, you'll need a new .licz file from Dassault. All right, finally, step number 5. Install DraftSight on clients. Run the standard DraftSight installer on each client machine, and then when it asks for a licensing type, select DSLS. Enter the server name and port 4085. No additional software is installed on the client. DraftSight is now designated as a DSLS client. Okay, so now that we got all that hard part out of the way, it's up and running. Let's talk about the day-to-day management. So, monitoring license users. All this happens in the license administration tool on the server. You select the server and you can view all enrolled licenses and their concurrent checkouts, product name, user machine, and checkout time. Unlike SNL, there is no separate client utility. So all administration is server side through the GUI. Revoking a license when a user leaves. So if the license admin in the license manager tool, the admin tool, you can locate an active session and release it. If you need to clear all seats at once, start and restart the Windows service named Dassault Systems License Server. The service restarts quickly, and like with SNL, clients will reacquire their seats automatically. Offline borrowing. Yes, DSLS supports it, but here's where it's a little different from SNL. For DSLS users, the borrow process is initiated from inside DraftSight itself through the help menu licenses borrow. The user must be connected to the network to borrow, same as SNL. This is one of the key behavioral differences between the two systems, so make sure your users know which process applies to them. And then high availability. DSLS failover cluster. The DSLS uses a 2-node model rather than SNL's 3-server quorum. You have a primary server that handles all license requests and a failover node on standby. If the primary goes offline, the failover takes over automatically. Both servers must be listed in the .licz license file. Dassault generates it for both host IDs. Clock synchronization within 1 hour is required between both nodes. Port 4086 must be open and between the two servers for cluster communication. So there is a limitation, though, worth noting. You cannot run DSLS on the same machine as an SNL server. They are separate installations with separate hardware requirements. So for troubleshooting DSLS, the log is within Windows Event Viewer. Open the Event Viewer, go to Windows Logs Application, and filter by source Dassault Systems License Server. That is where you'll find connection errors and enrollment failures. Now, before I move on to the pro tip section at the very end here, I want to leave you with this side-by-side comparison table. It's a nice little useful reference. This way you can tell the difference between which versions you have. So let me call out the rows that is the most, practical. Offline borrow. How? So SNL uses the SNL Manager client application as a separate tool. DSLS initiates borrowing from inside DraftSight via the help menu. If you have users on both systems, this difference will cause confusion if it's not communicated clearly. Client software required. For SNL, yes, the SNL Manager client is automatically installed along DraftSight and is needed for borrowing and server manager. For DSLS, no client software is needed. Clients are designated as DSLS clients through the DraftSight installer alone. SolidWorks compatible. SNL, yes. The same server, save manager. DSLS, no. It cannot coexist with or replace an SNL server for SolidWorks. Options file support. SNL, yes. We cover the SolidWorks .opt file in the pro tip section coming up for timeouts and reserved seats. DSLS has no options file. Idle session management and reserve seats are handled differently through DSLS's own configuration model. So if you want to take a quick screenshot of this, go ahead, take a quick screenshot or, print it out. It's a quick reference for when you're on a support call, trying to remember which tool does what. This is a nice little handy dandy tool. Handy dandy chart, actually. All right, now I'm going to leave you with a couple pro tips that is specifically, these ones apply to SNL unless kind of specified. So tip number 1, idle seat timeouts, and the SNL options file. This is the most frequent forum question that I see out there. All my seats show as in use, but no one is actively working. How do I get them back? The answer is the Flex LM option file. It's a plain just text file. It's named sldworks.opt. The name has to match the vendor daemon name exactly, and it lives in the same folder as your license information on the SNL server. By default, SNL never automatically reclaims an idle seat. So someone can lock their screen and go on vacation with DraftSight open, and that seat stays consumed. The timeout directive changes this. Timeout DraftSight 7200 tells SNL to reclaim a seat after 7200 seconds of inactivity, basically 2 hours. Timeout all applies the timeout globally to all features. So the reserve directive lets you hold seats for specific users or groups. If you have power users who cannot be locked out during peak hours, reserve 2 seats for them, and no matter how full the pool gets, those seats are held. On the right side of the slide is how to enable the options file through the SNL Manager interface. You do it through the modify, reactive, activate, reactivate flow, not just by dropping the file in a folder. So 3 things to remember. Always restart the SNL service after changing the .opt file. Changes are not hot reloaded, okay? The file is case sensitive. Your feature names must match your license exactly. And understand the differences between timeout and linger. Timeout reclaims idle seats. Linger keeps a seat briefly available after DraftSight closes. It's useful for when a user frequently restarts the application. So say if something, goes wrong, or just maybe they closed out and they go, oh man, I didn't mean to close out. You can just click back into it. Linger will take care of that. All right, so tip number 2, log files and the LM util diagnostics. When something goes wrong with SNL, this is where you go. The default log is lmgrd.log in the SNL installation folder. I recommend sending a custom path and SNL manager to the server administrator to the debug log file. Point somewhere to find. The error code table on the slide is your quick reference. Error-4 is all seats in use. Error-15 is the client can't reach the server. Check port 25734 on the firewall is first. Error-96 means the server machine is down. Oh no, the SNL service has stopped, so you gotta go restart it. Error-97 is the vendor daemon SL daemon has crashed. Restart the SNL service and check the log for the root cause. And an error-1 means the client has no server configured. Basically, the port at server syntax wasn't entered during installation or needs validating via the SNL Manager client server list tab. At the very bottom are the 2 lmutil commands to have in your runbook. And lmutil lmstat with a -a gives you a full picture of everything happening on the license server. lmutil lmremove with the right arguments lets you surgically force check in a specific user's seat without disrupting anyone else. So for DSLS, use Windows Event Viewer as covered in the previous section. The lmutil commands do not apply to DSLS. All right. Tip number 3. This covers SNL redundancy, license renewals, and server migration. For SNL high availability, FlexLM supports a 3-server quorum. You have exactly 3 servers, no more, no less. If you remember the old Monty Python film, 3 is thy number is 3. I could go more into it, but I'm sure if you are out there, I know you all are Monty Python fans just like I am. So it's a hard FlexLM requirement. As long as there are 2 or 3 online, license server continues. 1 server can be offline for any kind of maintenance and 0 user impact. All three host IDs must be in activation, and clocks must be synchronized via NTP. So note, this is not load balancing. The primary server handles all the requests. The secondary and the third are pure failovers. DSLS uses a different approach. Two-node primary failover, as covered in the previous section. For renewals, request your new serial activation or .licz file before expiring. Allow 1 to 3 business days for processing, and then for the SNL side, stop the service, reactivate with a new serial, restart. For DSLS, enroll the new .licz file in the license admin tool. And finally, for server migration, moving to a new machine means a new host ID, which means a new license activation. Contact your reseller in advance, 1 to 3 business days for the transfer to process. During migration, keep the old server running and pointing clients at it via existing port at server setting. Once the new server is validated, update clients using the SNL Manager Client Server List tab or by redeploying the deployment wizard. Okay, so finally, here's tip number 4. This covers virtual environments and applies to both SNL and DSLS. For the license server on a VM, supported for both, but stability is critical. For SNL, the host ID is MAC-based. Your hypervisor must have a static virtual MAC address configured. For DSLS, the server identity is also hardware tied. The number one mistake in virtual environments is cloning a VM that's running either license manager. A clone gets a new identity, and the license activation becomes invalid. Always deactivate and unenroll the license before cloning. So for remote desktop services, each concurrent DraftSight session running on an RDS server consumes 1 floating seat. Count peak concurrent sessions, not total users. For SNL, LMStat will show the RDS server machine's name for all sessions. Use the username column to identify individual users. For DSLS, the license admin tool shows user login names per session. So for VDI, Citrix, VMware Horizon, same rule, 1 session equals 1 seat. Non-persistent desktop pools can present unstable identities to the license server. So test license checkout thoroughly in your VDI environment before wide rollout. Configure session logoff scripts to close DraftSight so seats are released when users log off rather than being held open by orphan sessions. So this little green bar at the bottom is the universal rule. 1 concurrent DraftSight session equals 1 SNL or DSLS floating seat, regardless of how it's delivered. The blue bar at the very, very bottom is just a reminder, both license managers are Windows only on the server and client side. If you have a Mac users, they need standalone licenses. Okay, so this wraps up everything. We've covered a lot of ground here. SNL from scratch, pro tips, full DSLS deep dive, side-by-side comparison. I'm sure you all have a lot of questions. Let's check the chat to see if there's anything in there, and we will go in and see what kind of things. And feel free to shout out any stories too that you might have.